Welcome back. This video we continue our look at the LR32 sys and we're going to focus on the rail and how that works. But first, here's a jingle. With the router now on, this can now slot onto the rail and you can hear that click. What's happening is every time you move this lever, you are moving a cam here on the base plate. That cam is engaging with this series of holes. So every time it engages, engages and engages, that's setting the 32mm distance for our holes. And that gives us a lot of accuracy. So I can now make a cut at every one of these holes. Now that we've also zeroed these cams, I can now set these to whatever distance I want this rail to be. So if I set that at my 50 and my 80mm mark, this cut now will be exactly 80mm from the edge of the material. Once we've got the router set up and we've got everything calibrated into zero, we now need to fix the rail to the material that we want to work on. That's where these two bars come in. Not sure this is going to come from the camera, but just here on the rail it says 32mm. If you turn it over, it says 16mm. That number is signifying the position that they attach to on the rail. You'll also notice there's a number of cams here that stick up at different intervals. Now the expression is up and out. So if you want your first hole on your panel to be 32mm from the end, you use the 32mm setting. And that needs to be up and out. 32mm facing up, facing out from the rail. And then this uses those cams to locate into one of those cutouts, and you can now see that hole aligns and I can lock into place. If you can also see, the cam that I've just put in place is now covering half of that hole, and that would be where the edge of my board reference is. So the first hole that I cut will be that one, which will be exactly 32mm from the edge of the board. If I wanted my hole to be 16mm from the edge of the board, I would turn this over so the 16mm is facing up and it's facing out. And there's two little marks here, like an equal sign, and that's the piece that should be facing out. And again, this now positions into the holes, and again we tighten that down with the little black knob. And now you'll notice that the first hole here is actually clear. This cam is not protruding into that hole at all. If you look on this side, you can see that that cam is actually halfway between the hole that's underneath here and this one, or 16mm. So when we now put the board's edge here, the first hole will be at 16mm from the end of the board. That rests on one end of the board, and then you snug it up, and then you bring the second cam down, again using the 16 or the 32 depending on which way you're working, into the hole, and that references on the other hole, on the other end of the board. So the idea goes that these two clamps, that reference point here and that reference point there, sandwich the board between them. And if all your boards are the same size, then all these holes will always be in the same place, because we reference in the front of the board, we've zeroed the scale. The router always clicks into these holes, so it's always drilling 5mm centers, sorry, 32mm centers with a 5mm hole, and the board is always clamped in the same position between here, and that's what gives you your repeatability. Now that would suggest that the board here has got to be a certain size. And in order to get the best out of this kit, you want to make your board a multiple of 16 or 32mm, sorry, 32mm long. So if you had a board that was 62mm, 64, my maths is rubbish. If you had a board that was 64mm, that would clamp between those two rails in a consistent way. And any multiple of 32 along this rail would then give you that position. If you have something that's not a multiple of 32, you can still use it, you can still reference one end, but then this end will not be referenced, and therefore that gives you a potential for a slight deviation. So when you're designing your panels, you want to design them with that 32 multiple in mind. You can always cut the panels down once you've got your holes drilled, and that's what I tend to work. So once you've got this set up for your board, these clamps, you put it on your board, you've placed it into position from the front to back. These clamps simply come along and they allow you to clamp the wood to the bar. Then you can take away the reference guides out of the way and you can go ahead and you can do your cuts. We're done. The system is now set up, it's calibrated, we know how to use it on the rail. So now I'm going to go ahead and use it on our sysport build. So if you want to see this in use, check out that video. Until then, see you next time.